Good morning, Americans and humans. This is your favorite alien here on Wednesday, March 9th, 2022, with a special commentary directed at Russia, the United States, the EU, and China. So, with further ado, here it goes. To the states of Russia, the United States, China, the European Union, and NATO, concerning Ukraine and Russia. I would like to say the following here. As a favorite alien from another planet, and because you guys' stupidity has caused this. American, you're stupid. Europeans, you're stupid. Russia, you're even dumber. And China, you're stupid for backing Russia. That said, in order to get Russia extricated from this problem, I would suggest the following. Russia, immediate pullout of all your forces from Ukraine territory, including the eastern part that you have annexed. That part belongs to Ukraine. And there should be a referendum on the people that live there. If they so desire to be with Mother Russia, they should go to you. Because if they consider themselves Russian, they go to your territory. Okay? The Crimea is a different story, and I'll get to that in a second. But you should withdraw all your forces. And the United Nations should declare Ukraine an open UN nation. And I'll get to that in a second. Ukraine, you should immediately denounce that you want to be part of the NATO alliance. The European Union is a different thing because you are European. Russia is European to some extent on the Ural Mountain side. So there's a Euro Russia and there's nation Russia. But Ukraine, you lie specifically west of the Ural Mountains, so you are technically a European country. So you should be allowed to petition for the European Union. The United States had no business trying to create NATO countries out of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and countries bordering Russia, and especially Ukraine. Russia has a legitimate beef here, okay? But Russia, you have committed crimes against humanity here. And it's the United Nations business to deal with you once you pull out with sanctions and whatever else they deem appropriate, because you created this mess. You should have asked for a way out of this, and there was a way out of it, but you didn't want to take it. The Americans are a pain in the ass, yes, I know, and so are the Chinese, and so are you. And the Europeans, too. But here's what I suggest. There a 10-mile, or pardon me, 20-mile, 10 miles on each side of the border between Russia and Ukraine. Be considered a neutral zone, manned by United Nations personnel. And I'll get to the United Nations in a second. Therefore, no Russian forces at the Ukrainian border. Ukraine should have the right to decide if they want to keep their arms or if they do not want to keep their arms. Okay? They're an independent nation. They understand that Russia is their neighbor for good and bad. And Russia should understand that Ukraine, for good and bad, is their neighbor. If they're a democratic country, that's too bad for Russia. And you got to treat them accordingly. And Ukraine, you're a democratic country. You shouldn't be complaining about Russia because Russia is Russia. It's like China treating their people the way they do, Russia treating their people the way they do. That's in their territory. You have created nation states on this planet. So therefore, you got to bear the good and the bad. Now, when the United Nations declaring Ukraine a United Nations country, there should be abstentions to this for the United Nations. The United States, NATO nations, China, Russia, and France and England, or the United Kingdom, pardon me, and their proxies, North Korea, Iran, should not be part of the United Nations affairs with Ukraine. You should abstain and be outside of this. And I would have appointed, if they accept, Canada to take the lead on this. Be the point with the other countries of the United Nations that are not part of this mess. And make sure that there's a neutrality adhered to by both Russia and Ukraine, guaranteeing Ukraine's sovereignty over their territory, and Russia never to interfere in the internal affairs of Ukraine again. The Ukraine would not be part of the NATO organization because they're too close to your border. They're an international UN nation. They're free to do what they want as long as it does not affect your territory. You do not affect theirs. The people that live there have either the option of being Ukrainian or Russian. If they're Russian, they go to your territory. If they're Ukrainian, they stay there and stop barking. Now, in relation to the Crimea, you took it by force. You could have brought that to the United Nations because it was a holdover from the Soviet Union. And you should have brought your case to the United Nations because you had a case there, Russia. Because the Soviet Union and their dumbest idea, and that was a Ukrainian that did this, Khrushchev ceded the territory from your Russian Federation to the Ukrainian SSR country that existed under the Soviet Union. Therefore, you should have, when Ukraine got independence and the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, it was up to the United Nations to see if they were going to grandfather that in under the old Soviet Union or if the Crimea would be returned to you. But nobody ever asked that question when that came in handy. The Americans made sure nobody asked that question. This is your favorite alien saying, this is my first salvo here, because this is a lot more complicated to do. What do you think of this? People who hear this. It's a good way of saving face, avoiding World War III, for the time being anyway, until Putin decides otherwise. And Putin's actions during his invasion of Ukraine should be up to the United Nations. It shouldn't be the Americans. It shouldn't be anybody else. Since this was a stupid thing by everybody involved, and a lot of people got killed here, it is my opinion that everybody shares responsibility in the bloodshed here. The Ukrainians, the Americans, the Russians, the Chinese, the Europeans, and the United Nations all got their blood on their hands over this. How do you handle this? Well, you got to do this one step at a time. So what do you say? This is your favorite alien putting this out there. Good day.